their microphone. Thank you.
Okay, we're live.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to this September 1st meeting of the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. It's 6:03. I'd like to welcome all the board members. We have Superintendent Madden, Human Resource Services Director Moselle Orton, Carrie Gardner. I'm not sure your exact title. Sorry, Carrie. Board Legal Representation Patrick Tanner, District Legal Services Director Christina Kindle in the room. Welcome to everybody. I'd like to take a motion to go to convene a closed executive session.
President Ford, I'd like to make a motion to move into closed executive session to talk about negotiations and character and competence of personnel. To start now, obviously, and if we aren't able to finish all of our topics by 6:27, or at least sometime before 6:30, that we reconvene at the end of the meeting.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second. I'll second.
Thank you, Sam. We have a motion to go into closed executive session for litigation and character and professional competence individual, beginning now, and hopefully hopefully finishing, and if we don't finish, we'll reconvene after the end of the open portion of the meeting. Motion by Nate and seconded by Sam, and let's go ahead and take a vote on that, starting with you, Michelle.
Michelle Tuitpo, yes.
Discussion first. I mean, so I want to discuss whether we go into close. We don't have it on our agenda to go in afterwards, so I'd like to discuss that at the end of the meeting, based on the time of the end of our meeting. I think we should discuss about whether we reconvene at a later time or go in at the end of our meeting afterwards. So I think that should depend on what time we're ending our meeting. So, I mean, I think we make that the motion should not be dependent. We should not be automatically go in at the end of our meeting.
We don't have it. Patrick, do you want to weigh in on that? How we should approach that?
Well, I guess my question is whether that is whether what Board Member Kennedy said relates to whether that's legally permissible in view of the agenda, or whether she is speaking in opposition to the motion, that aspect of the motion that can be determined at this point in time. I'm not sure I understood.
Yes, I would like to support the motion to go into closed session now, but not necessarily to go in automatically at the end of the meeting. I'd like to see what time it is at the end of the meeting before we decide whether or not we're going to go in to closed session again at the end of the meeting, and decide that at the end of the meeting, depending on the time.
So I'm understanding that as basically speaking to the motion rather than
Exactly.
raising a legal question for me. Yeah.
Right.
The legal question, I think, Patrick, is are we able to do that? Are we able to call a new closed session after this meeting?
Yeah, I believe you are, yes. I believe if the motion specifies that this is when the closed meeting is going to be held, and that's in the open portion of the meeting, then that's legally permissible as far as the Open Meetings Act and the closed meeting restrictions are concerned. Whether you want to do that, that's a question open to debate for the board.
We have several topics, which I do anticipate will take longer than the 20 minutes we've got right now. So I guess that's a question for the board on whether you want to take the 20 minutes we've got now, and I guess at the end of the meeting we could decide then if we've got time to finish.
Melissa, this is Christy. So I appreciate what Catherine is saying. However, there is a motion on the floor and we're going around the table. So if Catherine wants to either vote for or against with what Patrick has said, then that's great.
Just discussion on the motion.
This is just, discussion on the motion.
Why don't we just have a separate motion at the end? I just think that would be easier, and then we can discuss at the end if we want to go in or not. And we can try really hard to be quick. And I mean, just to discuss this more now
Exactly.
is self-defeating. So why don't, I mean, if Nate's willing to rescind his motion, why don't we just vote to go into closed session now and then see where we are at the end of the meeting. I mean, I don't anticipate that it would be hard to get another motion to carry at the end.
I'm willing to rescind or take a friendly amendment.
Yes, I'm vote that we move to go into closed session now with no expectation of going into closed session later. The possibility, but not the expectation.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
You're muted.
Any discussion to that? If there's no discussion to that, let's go ahead and vote, starting with you, Michelle.
Michelle Tuitpo, yes.
Arthur Melker, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, we're now in closed session.
Okay, let me just check with Sam. Yeah, sure. Sam might have set you up for the board meeting. The door was shut. Peek in, and if not, you're welcome to stay here.
Do we have everybody here? Are we streaming, Superintendent?
We are. I'm just checking with Sam to make sure. I'm just checking with Sam to make sure. Okay, I don't know why that's on.
That is so cool, Larry, that you set that up to do that.
And it looks like I'm not even moving my mouth, right? Yeah, it's working now.
I don't see Nate yet, but thank you all for being here. I'd like to welcome everybody who's participating on this call, and also everybody who's participating by watching our live stream of the meeting. Thank you for being here. Today is September 1st, Tuesday, 6:32 p.m. Like to welcome you all. Especially like to welcome all of our board members and our superintendent, Larry Madden, and business administrator, Alan Kersley. I'd also like to welcome and thank our representatives from our employee groups. Tonight we have Adrian Lobato representing SLASA. Thank you, Adrian, for being here. James Tobler, who represents SLEA. Ben Rowley represents transportation. Cindy Mills is always great to be with us and represent SLEOPA. B. Alonso represents child nutrition, and Eric Adams with buildings and grounds. And then a special welcome to our student board member, Arundhati Uman. Thanks for joining us, Arundhati. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Superintendent, maybe you'll lead us in that.
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. I appreciate you doing that. Let's move to our consent agenda, which board members have had an opportunity to look through and see the attachments. I'd be happy to take a motion on our consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda of September 1st, 2020, consistent of the purchasing and accounting reports, the budget report for July 2020, the payment voucher report, the school's financial report for July 31st, 2020, human resource services report, and the minutes for board meetings July 7th, July 21st, July 30th, August 4th, and August 11th of 2020, and the fraud risk management document.
Thanks, Sam. Do I have a second to that motion?
This is Christy Sweat. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Sam and a second. Motion?
Yes, I would like to discuss one thing.
All right,
I would
all
like,
right,
to- I don't know what, I guess it's under the purchasing report, the two items for University of Utah. I would like to see some documentation of that. We're putting out $150,000 and we don't have any kids in school. I want to see what they're going to be doing. We paid $150,000 last year for a similar program, behavior program that I really didn't feel was very good. I would like to find out what is going on here with these two programs that they've got listed there on the purchasing report for about $150,000. And I was wondering if we're going to get a rebate on the money we paid last year for the $150,000 we put the University of Utah. They didn't even have anything after March. So that would be my proposal. This board deserves to have some documentation on those two items. We don't even know what they're doing. And I don't know who it does, but I know that whoever, I guess it was, well, I see, I don't know who, it's Sandra is the one that put it
Thanks,
in.
Mike.
Anyway.
Thanks, Mike. I hear you asking for documentation on those two items. I had mentioned that to our business administrator. Alan, do you want to speak to that? If you do, go ahead. I don't see Alan.
You're muted, Alan.
There. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to the special ed department to get some more detail on what these contracts are for. And Shelley Halverson responded with an email. And if you'd like, I would just like to read her response. For the first contract, it's for the Ascend program. And this is the one that's $100,000. We continued remote therapy throughout the spring for students that were enrolled in the Ascend program. We remain in contact also throughout the summer. This fall, the plan is to push into the schools that had identified students prior to the dismissal for possible enrollment at the Ascend program. Those students will receive the support of group therapy, individual therapy, and parent training, just as they would have if they were attending Ascend in person. However, they will remain enrolled at their home school. We felt that during the remote learning period of the district, we wanted students to stay as connected to their home school as possible. We are also pushing into hub schools, starting with Emerson, to provide some school-wide supports, such as optional SEL and mindfulness groups. This would go along with targeted individual and group therapy support for students, including our students in our behavior support classrooms, who are often identified as needing the type of support Ascend has to offer. We are working with Emerson administration, counselors, and assigned social workers to ensure program coherence and that Ascend is a support to what Emerson already has in place. This is one area that was difficult for Emerson as a hub school. Once we know exactly the time commitment we have at Emerson, we would then extend that offer to Franklin and finally Bachman. We have identified this priority order of hub schools based on numbers of students placed at those schools and current levels of resources already at those schools. Then the second contract, which is for roughly $50,000 for behavior specialist support. She states, this fall, students paid for out of this contract will continue to work with the behavior specialists to support data collection and implementation of behavior plans for students. Some of this is done remotely and some can be done in person based on the need for support of students assessing in-person services during this period. They have also supported the behavior specialists to support in-home behavior programming at parent request. This team has also developed online social skills resources being used to support both general education and special education students in need of social skills training to support them in the either remote learning world or in person. So those were kind of some details I got from Shelley Halverson. I'd also be happy to forward that email to the board members if you would like.
Did any of the special ed teachers request these programs?
That I do not know. I'd have to ask Shelley the origin of these programs.
It seems to me we're spending $150,000 for overkill. And that's just my opinion, you know, of course, whatever.
Thanks, Mike, for that. And Alan, I would say send those emails to the board, and maybe connect with Mike on any documentation he feels like he needs. Larry?
I would just add that I did work with those folks last year through the Delegate at Bryan, and I found that they were very effective. They know what they're doing, and they did provide one-on-one therapy for the students in that class that did it.
Thank you. Any other discussion to the motion on the consent? Sandra, buen dia.
I just wanted to add, this was a response to, this preceded me moving into my current district position. But my understanding is this came from teachers, administrators, and board members concerned that we had behaviors by general education students that were very concerning, and this provided an opportunity to support schools and families in placing these students in this Ascend program to be able to work with them one-on-one to develop self-regulation skills and be able to coordinate with schools in the transition back. And in that process, also engage in child find to see if they actually qualified for special education services. So the program was designed in response to a lot of concerns related to really outlier behavior in schools.
I thought we had district behavior specialists.
We do have behavior specialists.
Well, then why do we need to pay $150,000 to the University of Utah if we already got the behavior specialists here? They've been trained by somebody. Anyway, that's no, I'm done.
Well,
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Sandra.
Yeah, just wanted to be able to provide an additional explanation for what was provided to me in relation to this commitment.
Thank you. Sam, did you have a comment in relation to the consent agenda?
I was just going to say that as the representative for Emerson, I support this, and I know that this work has been helpful, and I'm excited to hear that it will eventually maybe continue to be extended to the other hub schools that I know have a lot of needs.
Okay. Any other discussion to the consent agenda?
Melissa, this is Christy. So I just want to thank Dr. Bentia for that additional information, and also Shelley Halverson. I know that it was a conversation that we had, as board members, and appreciated the opportunity to partner, with not only our behavioral specialists, but with this program, that was dealing with some of the issues that was coming out of our schools. So thank you for the additional information, Alan, and to Dr. Bendia.
Let's go ahead and vote on the consent agenda.
Michelle Tuccipo, yes.
Mike Namalka, abstain.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, the consent agenda passes. Thanks for that discussion. Let's move to the request to speak portion of our agenda. We just had one request to speak email, and that will be attached to the minutes of this meeting. And then moving on to reports. And I'll turn the time to you, Superintendent Madden, for the reopening update.
Okay. So I guess first thing I would like to say is that I'm feeling maybe more optimistic. Now I went out and visited 15 schools within the last week and saw the great work that people are doing, saw lots of administrators, walked around and talked to teachers in every school that I went into. I think people are anxious. I think we're all a little anxious, but everybody's working really hard, ready to give their best. I saw kids that were doing testing, talked to a lot of teachers that had met with students and parents, and I think that was getting them kind of charged up to actually meet with families again as we move into the fall. They all said they felt like, everybody that I talked to said they felt like it was going well. People were at different places along their journey of getting ready, but they were very, very positive. There were lots of schools sending home kits, so they'd assembled materials, and then as a student came in with their family, they would send home a kit that the student will then use when they're doing their remote learning with the student. So they'll actually have physical items there with them. And then I talked to students and parents. The students were, of course, all just lovely. They were excited. Parents seemed pretty positive, the parents that I talked to. And so it was uplifting, and I'll get back out to the rest of the schools over the next week or so. We did post today some videos, Canvas videos for parents. Were posted on the website today, and Dr. Tiffany Hall also put together a PDF guide for parents to Canvas. It kind of mirrors what's on the videos, and that went up today as well. In terms of technology, it's a little bit hard to say how many computers we've actually checked out so far, because at some of the schools, in terms of efficiency, they have done that on paper, and then they have to go enter them in the system. So it's not as simple as us just being able to go look and see. So we're kind of waiting on. We've called out to schools. We're waiting on the information back from them. We have checked out 600 hotspots, which was what we had. We have Sam's gotten a quick order in. We have 200 more that are going to ship on this Thursday, so we'll have those very quickly. And we have a contract in place now with Comcast, so we're ready to go in terms of helping our families that need it get internet service. We have spent all of the money that we had on technology. It is all used, including the CARES money we got from the county. We do have 6,000 additional computers on the way, and when those get here, that'll bring us to 19,000. We're still a little short of the 1-to-1, but that'll get us up to 19,000. Sam is polling our distributors to see how many of those. The original time frame was about the 17th or so of September, and he was polling them today and getting some information back and just seeing how many we could get shipped out more quickly. So we'll keep gathering data on that and see where we are, but that's what I can give you on that part right now. There was just to kind of revisit the schedule conversation that we've had a few times. There was, widespread participation. We had a group that handled elementary, another group for middle school, and another group for high school. The kind of the primary rationale with all of those was to come up with a schedule that was going to work for students in the best way possible. We did ask for, and it was attached to the agenda, a waiver to the 990 hours. And there's also some correspondence with USBE that was attached to the agenda that shows that was accepted. Our hours from the 990, what we wanted at the time was flexibility, and we do appreciate that. Right now, for most of our students in middle schools, high schools, and elementary schools, we're right around 900 hours, or maybe slightly below that with the schedules that we've created right now. Kindergarten or less, they're closer to 600. We are maintaining those planning committees in elementary, middle school, and high school, and actually kind of reforming the high school committee. And we'll use those to kind of watch our progress, see what's going on. They may recommend tweaks along the way. I know in terms of the high school committee, or the high school start, we really are committed to a semester with the program that we have, but we can also gather data along the way and look at that. And if we were to make a change, or the groups were to recommend a change, we would look at that in the middle of the year in January. But those committees are ongoing, and Roberto Munoz is going to run that high school committee for us, and we'll be taking information from them. In terms of registration, earlier today, we were at 20,368. That's down a little bit from normal, but we still have 3 days to go this week, and schools had spread out or registration, inviting families in. We haven't had open labs like we were able to have last year, so that does make it a little harder. And I know schools have been reaching out to those families that don't have internet and helping them navigate this, but that process has been a little slower than it would be in a normal year. I would also say that there have been a lot of questions about FTE and funding, and in at least preliminary conversations with the state, they're aware of the predicament that all school districts are in this year in terms of student population, and they're talking about ways to deal with that in a fair way for upcoming years. And so I expect that it would be something based on perhaps ADM from a previous year, or maybe a rolling average of ADM from previous years, but they haven't made a final decision on that yet. But they are aware of the predicament that some school districts are in, and I believe that we'll have help in that way. In terms of getting students back into the building, I mean, we haven't begun yet. There was a question on % of students in the building, and that's difficult to say. We can give more accurate information on that, I think, a couple weeks after we start. But we have asked schools to start slowly. We did allow them the latitude to bring in small groups of students or individuals that may have specific needs, but we're asking them to start slowly with that as well. We haven't given specific parameters or numbers. We expect everyone, of course, to stay within the safety guidelines that are outlined already by the state and the county. But we've tried to leave a little latitude for schools to make those decisions based on the needs of their individual student population. So like I said, we'll have more information on that in a couple of weeks. There was also a question about opening the district office, and the district office has been open, and people have been coming to human resources and student services, but they've done so by appointment. So the building, I think, as Board Member Kennedy knows when she came today, the building has been closed, and we are talking about that this week in our cabinet meeting, and I look forward to having the building open to the public in the very near future. That could even be early next week. We'll have more details about that by the end of the week. You also saw in your attachments the teacher expectations, and just to kind of address some of the high points of that, we tried to create those teacher expectations focused on doing the job as well as possible while maintaining flexibility for schools to meet their unique needs. And so we really we made it about doing the job and doing it well. And so things like, teachers need to have adequate equipment and bandwidth to do their job. We have that in the schools, and teachers can work in their classrooms. We do expect that there is some in-person, and when we say in-person, the word we've been using is synchronous, when we have a teacher online with students online at the same time. And we expect that that kind of teaching does take place. We expect that everyone will integrate social emotional learning lessons. We've set a minimum of one a week, but I know in my conversations with teachers, I think they're well aware of the need to take care of students' mental well-being, social needs, and so I expect we'll probably see quite a bit more of that. We didn't define specifically how much synchronous and asynchronous time, because that might vary. From one day to the next, it might vary depending on what a class was doing. And so I can imagine, like a high school science class, if you're doing a lab one day, you may have a lot of synchronous time, or you may have a lot of asynchronous time if students are gathering data outside of class. So We left that open, but what we do expect is weekly schedules from teachers for students and families. And so we expect that a student could look at their schedule for the week, know exactly when they had to be in what position for the type of learning that was defined. We also had there was a brief part in on attendance within the teacher expectations, and I might turn this over to Tiffany, but I also sent you today, if you'd had a chance to see it in your email, Tiffany made a really nice graphic on attendance and how we're going to keep track of attendance. Tiffany, do you want to add anything about attendance in particular? Or if there are any questions, we could certainly answer them.
Yeah, if there are no questions.
I mean, we have some latitude. We have some lag time, some days we can use for attendance. So as long as we're collecting a contact information with the students, then we will be able to mark them as attending.
One of the things we want to be really aware of and supportive of is so many of our parents told us that they wouldn't be able, their kids may not be doing the synchronous time, but they would be watching and recording and doing the work after that. So the attendance policy is kind of set up so that there's no penalty, no harm. Somebody watches the recording and does the exit ticket or the assignment that's connected to that later, within maybe over the weekend or within the next 5 to 7 school days, then we're able to go back and reconcile that attendance, and so that the day that they've missed would be marked absent, as well as that day would be corrected when they do the asynchronous work, and there is no penalty for that when that happens.
Tiffany, do you mind describing the graph that the board received? Because not everybody can see that. Maybe walk us through it.
Would you like me to share that on my screen?
That'd be great.
Okay, do I have permission, Superintendent?
That's a really super good question. Do you have that little the share content icon down at the bottom?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure I could even find my document. Okay, there we are. Let's see, do I have it? Okay, sorry, WebEx is different. There we go. So this is just a quick and dirty look at how attendance would look. So teachers really have two options of taking student attendance. First is if it's in a live or a synchronous class session. So the teacher is teaching in Zoom, students are asking questions, they're putting responses in the chat box, they're submitting streams through Canvas. There are a lot of different ways that we're determining that they're paying attention and that they're engaging in the learning. And so if teachers are doing that, then one of the things that they can do, and I think that this pointer shows, is that a teacher could just look at their list of attendees in their Zoom report and use that to take attendance. If they have, and a good example of that would be the doing a biology lab, as the superintendent just mentioned. Kids would be doing things, watching, responding, asking questions. If they're doing something that maybe isn't, maybe they want to check for tomorrow, maybe they want to make sure they know everything that was understood as they come in, then another option for them is to give an exit ticket or a quiz or an assignment. This is a very common practice that many teachers use very often so that they're able to see where students are, where they need to adjust their planning to start tomorrow. And they can do that, and that is submitted through Canvas. And then they would just have a 11111 that would go down the line of their Canvas assignment link. And so that's an easy way for them to look. They can either get the list from Zoom, or they can give this assignment and use that turned in assignment to reflect in the attendance. Please note that we're not reflecting a grade about that in the attendance, but simply, the grade would be separate from it was turned in and it was done. Now, if they were watching that class later, if the class was recorded, and or it was one of our digital Wednesdays and they were doing independent work, then they would have to do an assignment. One of the things that the USBE required in the proposed plan was that there was a way for us to track asynchronous learning as well. So in giving that exit ticket, even if a student who watched it live didn't have an exit ticket, a student who's watching the recording would have an exit ticket. And that would allow the teacher to see that. And I put on this example on the next page that if we have a student called Jane, and Jane goes to Zoom, and the teacher assigns an exit ticket so that she is ready to, she's marked present. And the next day, the teacher's doing a lot of live stuff, and she just uses the Zoom list, and she's marked present. And she does her digital work on Wednesday, and she's marked present. But Thursday, she's out. Well, when she gets to the weekend and she does her exit ticket, she watches the recording and she does her exit ticket, it goes into the Canvas. Now, this sounds alarming, but I just want to say, as a person who uses Canvas to teach a lot, Canvas assignment is going to pop up as late. Well, we're not going to penalize them for being late because this is an accepted practice for the way that we are doing an asynchronous option for school. The nifty thing about it being marked late, though, is that it makes it really easy for the teacher to see. So the next Wednesday, when they come in and reconcile their attendance for the previous week, they could just look at that and say, oh, hey, Jane was flagged as late. That means that she did it and I hadn't already marked her attendance. And so she can update and reconcile that attendance in PowerSchool. So that's kind of the process. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thanks.
And then just to kind of finish up here, we, with the teacher expectations, before any teacher brings any individual students or small groups of students into the school, we expect that they will coordinate with their administrators when they do that. And then finally, we ask schools to use their school improvement councils, their SICs, to determine school expectations in terms of office hours and turnaround times for communications. So I don't have those numbers for you, but I know schools have been going through that process. Do you have any questions? That's what I have for an update for right now, unless you have other things that you'd like to ask. And I've got a few people here that can help. If not, we can move on.
I have a question about, I know we're doing a lot of assessments this week and next week. And I've had some people reach out to me to just express their gratitude that they were able to do their assessments outside. Is that an easy thing for parents to request to do? I know on one of the documents that I read in my email, it sort of said that the standard would be for some of these things to be available online, and some of them you really do need to come in.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if we can make sure that we're messaging that if anyone wants to be outside, that's, I mean, if anything, we err towards that being the norm just because it's safer.
Yeah, and that's actually what that the email for the request to speak today was about, exactly that. One of the schools doing testing outdoors. I saw kids doing testing both outdoors and indoors when I went around to schools last week. And where I did see testing indoors, kids were very far apart, way more than 6 feet. They were being super thoughtful in how they approach that. But yeah, I mean, we do have, we have a number of these tents, and it is possible to do some of these things outdoors.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Hall.
Go ahead, Christy.
Hey, thanks so much, Superintendent. Really appreciate all the information that you provided, and especially the questions that I had. I appreciate all of the exhibits that are attached to our meeting tonight that will be attached. Then, if anybody wants to look at them, then obviously they would be able to access those through the exhibits. I just had a couple of quick questions. So could you talk a little bit about the high school committee that you touched on, about how would we invite people to be a part of that committee? Is it going to, obviously it sounds like it's going to be a shared governance committee. I'm hoping it's larger than the one that that Brian did. And I don't know if they've already been thinking about dates and how they would put that out, to parents and teachers.
Do you have any more information about that, or is it just kind of in the beginning stages?
I think it's in the beginning stages, but I think Roberto could speak to that. We did talk about the potential makeup of that committee.
Yeah, thank you. We are in the beginning stages. We met in last week and talked about committee membership. And so we are looking at having principals select one teacher, SIC select a teacher. We're also looking to reach out to the SCC, the School Community Council, to have a parent elected to the committee, having the principal select someone that's a parent from the community. And so we talked about meeting twice before January, maybe 3 times. And we're really looking at this committee to be about continuous improvement. What can we refine in the schedule that we have? Because as Larry mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are going to be implementing this schedule at least until January. We are going to refine and look at what kind of scheduling conflicts students are running into and trying to resolve those where we can. But the focus of the meeting is just going to, or the committee is going to be about continuously improving our processes. And then if we have to in January create and go to something different, we will. And so it's at the beginning stages, but we, or I will communicate that out and we'll get that out to the appropriate constituents. Right now, I'm working on a draft to get out to principals from the high schools, the 3 comprehensive high schools in particular, so that I can get that committee membership solidified.
Great. Thanks so much. So I just want to then reiterate what I'm hearing both you and Larry say is that we're committed to stay with the A schedule for the first quarter, the B schedule, the second quarter, and then reassess. That's what you would be bringing the committee together to reassess at that point if the high school schedule would change starting in not until after winter break. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So then that seems like the committee would need to be convened, before, obviously, though we hit the winter break. So I've had quite a few questions about that, Superintendent, from the conversation that Brian Connolly and Rebecca Pittam were a part of, which I really appreciated the 2 of them reaching out to parents and talking with them about that. And so I know that they're very interested in, how that committee is going to be put together and being able to have that broad base, across all of our high schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for the Canvas videos. I think that's super important, and the PDF guides. Having it on the district side, I think, is also important. But could we also ask to have it put on the school sites, their websites, so that parents, that's usually where parents are going.
Yeah.
It's to the school site instead of the district site, but, have that link just saying, make sure that you check your school site also. I think that will be really helpful. So thank you for doing that. I don't know if maybe this is a question for Sam, but I certainly appreciate the effort that's gone out to get all of our computers out, and that with this next batch of 6,000 coming to reach the 19,000, just to get those additional, what would we need, like additional 4,000 computers?
Mm-hmm.
And then are the 200 hotspots enough? For the requests that we're getting, or do we also need to put in, requests for more hotspots?
I'd like to ask Sam that specifically, but we also have an arrangement through the foundation with Comcast now. And so we have another way to get internet. So hotspots aren't the only way, but we do have 200 more that should be here very early next week, I would think, if they ship on Thursday.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Sam?
I'm not sure if Sam's in. Sam's not in.
Maybe he's not in.
He's sending me an answer that says no, but I'm not quite sure what question that's.
What that means.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we talked about as a board that we have capital money, as Alan has said, that we can reach into to make sure that we can get those additional computers if we need them.
Yeah, and Sam pointed out we are applying for a grant through USBE to get 600 more.
Okay, so getting to that number of that 1-to-1, we're getting there. Do you know when the 6,000, I'm sorry, I missed that, when the 6,000 will be here?
So it was end of September. Now they have touch screens and they've had a little bit of, that's been a little bit slower. Sam thought that we would have them by the end of September. But like I said before, and maybe you did miss this part, was he was reaching out to all the vendors and seeing if we could get some of those 6,000 quicker. So we'll get whatever we can. It takes us just a minute then to get them imaged and get them ready to go. But we want to bring them in just as quickly as we can. But there will be more coming that will be later in September.
That's great. I know that we received an email today that was from Mr. Connolly that had a great rationale around the high school schedule. And I know that board members received that. We've seen that. And I would like to make a request that it's attached to our minutes, because I thought that it was very comprehensive and very detailed. And I think it would be a benefit, for us to have that attached to our minutes.
Absolutely.
That would be really great. And thank you for having the conversation around the district office. I think that there's just been a lot of questions, about services. And so you already know that a lot of people go down to the district first and foremost. Outside of that, I just want to say thank you for the responsiveness that we're getting, from everybody and down at the schools. And I've just loved listening to the reports that we've been getting from teachers and from parents about the small group meetings. And so I would just continue to, encourage our teachers in our schools, to do that. Even at the high school level, I know that's a little bit harder, but you've got a few less students this year than you do usually. And so hopefully they'll be able to, reach out to every single one of them, because it's been so far it's been very positive what I've seen.
It's great. When I was at Highland High, they were all on the phones calling all students. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nate.
Certainly. And just want to echo the gratitude to everybody who's been working on this. Superintendent Matt, I do have a question about, I've heard a number of community organizations are also working and coordinating to get computers in the hands of students and families in Salt Lake City School District. Do we know the validity of that, number one? And then if there's any type of coordination between our district or the Ed Foundation to make sure that we're getting computers in the hands of every kiddo and not doubling down in certain homes or certain kids?
Right. I talked to James Yappius about that today, and he is working with organizations trying to bring some more computers in through the foundation. He has a small number right now. He has 35 that we're ready to give out. But like you said too, he's also coordinating with Sam to make sure that we know where all of them are, where they go, and that if someone is getting a hotspot, we need to know where all this stuff is so that we don't double up. We need to get everybody served on a first.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, board members?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Oh, wait. Okay. So for the high school committee, I was wondering if it would be possible to involve high school students.
Yes.
Because nobody knows better than a high school student what they need. And I don't know how that would work, but they would also help to provide data regarding how the scheduling is working for them. My two main concerns with the scheduling, and I know we can't change it now until January, and that's fine. My two main concerns are AP and IB students. I know that they're being provided extra materials in between those 9 weeks, but I also know that it was really hard last year. Even when I was provided with those materials, it was very hard. It was more like self-learning, which was hard. My other concern would be for interactive courses like chemistry, where you're pouring chemicals and lighting things on fire. If I had it online first quarter and second quarter we went into the hybrid model, then maybe my best friend had the opportunity to go and actually do something, then that's another question from an equity standpoint to see how kids are learning. But that's all. So thank you.
Those are great questions. Thank you very much. And I had talked with Mr. Munoz about having students on this committee as well, and we can figure that out. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a voice that we absolutely want to include. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So I just want to go back to the number of devices. I was interested in the fact that we're going to have about 19,000 devices when we're all said and done. And I just wanted to clarify that we do have about 6,000, but only about 6,000 students that own their own devices or that are using their own devices. Is that right?
I think that's right. I'd have to ask Sam for sure.
Actually, we only have two. I mean, if we only are registered about 20,000 students, then we actually only have about 1,000, or maybe we're assuming we're going to register another 2,000 more. But I mean, that's not very many that are using their own devices, which is really surprising to me that we don't have more students using their own computers.
Yeah, I agree.
So are we, I mean, I guess what I'd love to see is the percentage of students who have checked out a district device. So could we just get a percentage of that? I mean, that's, you know, I guess that's very surprising to me that we don't have more students just using their own computers or their own devices. I mean, I don't expect it to be a large percentage, but I did expect it to be maybe 25% or something, or 20%.
Yeah, we can get that we can't get it quite yet because until we get everything in the system. But I would think in 2 weeks we could probably come up with that. Yeah,
I don't expect it more faster than that, but I did. You know, I mean, I would expect more than 2,000 students, maybe. But
go ahead, Dati.
Something that might help you round out those numbers. I know that we don't have the exact data, but 56% of the students in this district are low income. So that's about 14,000 students. So subtract the 6,000 students who are privileged, then that kind of accounts for the number of students with their own devices.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm aware of those, that 56%, and I just assumed that there might be more than
probably
10% that had their own device. But you know, it's interesting to me that we only have right now, you know, 1,000 students who are using their own device.
Yeah.
I also think that part of that is, as we are all online, you really need one-to-one. So even if you've got 3 or 4 students in a household, that's really 3 or 4 computers you need that you might have been sharing between those students. I know that that's the case in my own household, for example. Christy, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I just wanted to echo what you said, Melissa, because it was really interesting to me how many families in Precinct 7 did not get enough computers for every single child. They thought they could share, but realized in the spring how difficult that was. And so that's why I think that, you know, we're going to see that uptick, you know, with the number of computers.
And I certainly want every student to have his or her their own device. I support that completely. I just thought that maybe if families had one device, they might have 25%, you know, versus, and we might have 3 devices. So it's interesting that how many devices we actually did need. And I just like to see the percentage.
Thanks, Catherine. That's a good thought. And Superintendent, you've got that. You'll provide that.
Yeah.
Did I have other questions from board members? One thing I would like to see, Superintendent, would be the registrations at the individual schools. It would be interesting to me to see where we're down the most students, and a report. I don't, again, expect that immediately, but when you have that, that would be interesting for me to see.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the work that's going on. Michelle, I see Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. In addition to that, we can't hear you, Michelle.
In addition to Melissa's request, is there a way to find out where students go? So like if we're trying to find out where we're, like if there's students leaving, can we also find out where exactly they're going to?
We have a great chart that Sam does for us, Michelle, that can show that. But if they leave our district, that's a little bit harder to track unless they come back and say, oh, we've got your student. So, but that comes a little bit later, usually around, isn't it November, Melissa? It seems like that November time.
Okay.
That's a good question, Michelle. I think, thank you to everybody who's joined us for this portion of our meeting. I don't see any other board member hands for questions, but as always, continue to ask them, and we're happy to find the answer. And I know the superintendent is doing a lot of work, and a lot of people are doing a lot of work to make sure that this is a good experience for our students and families. And we applaud you for that and are grateful to you for that. So thank you. If Okay, let's move on to the next report on our agenda, which is an update about the sustainability resolution from our facilities director, Paul Schulte. Thanks for being here, Paul.
You bet. Can you see me and hear me? Because I just turned my camera and unmuted myself. All right. Well, thank you so much for some time to be with you today. I might say my 36-year career in education, this assignment has to be one of the top 5 that I've had, both for depth, breadth, and challenge, and also excited about it. I have been meeting with Greg Lebecci weekly this summer with everything else that we've been doing, obviously, to address the development of the task force, and also perhaps some strategies on how to meet the goals. These are very aggressive goals, as you know. We have sent out and have had accepted. We have 24 individuals that are on the committee, and that includes 8 students. So I thought that was exceptional, since the genesis of the committee was driven by students, and so it's great to have that organic membership. I think 3 from Highland, 2 from East, and 2 from West. We have community members. We have a member from the Salt Lake City, Debbie Lyons, who is the Salt Lake City Sustainability Officer. We have representatives from Rocky Mountain Dominion. We have Candace Penrod for our education and development, professional development. James from the foundation, obviously. Ricky Martinez representing the custodial department, focusing on the IPM and the cleaning materials and recycling. Todd Plaga, because Todd oversees all the new constructions. Tyler for the purchasing, relative to the green purchasing and those type of issues. Kelly Orton to help us with the the farm to school issues. Cody Colvin from Escalante, assistant principal, is our school administrator on the committee. Landon Clark from the Highland community is the parent community member. So we do have the committee put together. We have sent out invitations today. Our first committee meeting will be on September 23rd. We'll do that both. We have a big training room that we can, for those who would like to come participate in person, and masks and social distancing at the auxiliary services, as well as Zoom, so we can do it both ways. In addition, both myself and Mr. Lebecci has been meeting with different personnels and different companies to just kind of put together some background information that we're going to need for the committee. We've met with Rocky Mountain. We've met with Dominion Energy. We've met with 3 ESCO companies. One of the things that we feel really strongly about is that we want this to be very detailed, very authentic, and very prepared. And this is a fast track. We have to have a plan to the board by next year, the 21st, as you know, year 21, October, which will really get us down to basically 8 years to meet that first goal of renewability on 2030. So the ESCO companies we met with are all state approved from the state purchasing. And we believe that one of the steps that we need to do, and we've talked to both Superintendent Mattern and Alan, is going out for an RFP to have a partnership with the ESCO to help us. One of the biggest challenges we're going to need is to do a complete and significant inventory of all of our systems, and how we're going to upgrade those systems to meet these goals. I want you to all understand that from our perspective out in auxiliary services, is that even though we have a year to get going on that, we have basically adopted that this is now the way that Salt Lake City does business. So on our 5-year capital, if we have a chiller that needs to be replaced, or a boiler and these type of things, we don't think it's prudent to install one of those that doesn't meet the resolution. So even though we have a year to make a plan, for us, the day has arrived. Today, it would be very inefficient to install equipment that doesn't meet the resolution, then have to take it out in a few years. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're excited. We've got a great team. It's a big task, but we're up to it, and we are very, very pleased that the district is going this direction, and we support 100%, and we think we're going to have a good result and a good plan for you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the update. Do I have questions from board members? Nate?
Yeah, certainly. Paul, thank you for being here tonight and sharing with us the progress on this. I do have a question about participants on the committee. There were a number of community-based organizations like Heal Utah, the Sierra Club, that were actively supporting this work and supporting the student-based group from the district last year when we were dealing with this. Was there any consideration for community-based groups outside of some of the larger companies like Rocky Mountain Power, Dominion, to participate in this as well?
I haven't yet. I mean, nothing's chiseled in stone, obviously. Certainly the magnitude of the committee starts to become a challenge. And I went through the checklist embedded in the resolution, and like I said, we're at 24 already. So it doesn't mean, certainly, for two things. One, we can always, we can, this is not chiseled in stone and it's not a done deal. In addition, it doesn't mean that the committee can't draw on different resources throughout the process, which we anticipate. We actually have subgroup engagement folks, and so, so that may be a way to embed that as well, Nathan. But nothing's chiseled in stone. Those are the things that we can consider. But it is challenging how large it's getting, and that was meeting the bare essentials of what was outlined in the resolution.
No, I appreciate that, Paul. And offline, I'll go ahead and send you the names and contacts for some of those community organizations, so you can do with them what you need to as far as outreach. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you so much, Paul, for that update, and your enthusiasm is infectious. I just had a couple quick questions. So, this will obviously need to keep going for at least the next 10 years. Are you thinking people will serve for a year on the committee and then kind of be replaced, or what are the terms for the committee members?
The terms right now is to participate in helping us meet that October 2021 goal.
Oh, okay.
So that's the focus, is get us to there. We have to have the plan presented to you. I just, imagine we're going to have almost a whole board meeting dedicated to this, because this will be no small bit of information when we're there. Then I think, Sam, when you're done, when we get to that point, you're 100% accurate is, what are the partnerships? What does it look like going through there to make sure we continue that, no pun intended, that sustainability of the committee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
I think we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And I would anticipate that that's probably going to be embedded in the document.
That makes sense. And then how many people of that 24 will serve on the RFP committee? Because I'm imagining you're not thinking all 24 people on an RFP committee.
Great question. We anticipate the RFP committee will be more district personnel. So myself and Greg Lebeshi, obviously, we have to reach out to some other folks that may have that expertise, because I'm not an expert in sustainability, obviously, as well. So we haven't determined that. But it's usually about 3 or 4 members that work on an RFP committee. It's usually the normal amount for the ones that we've participated out in our auxiliary services.
Thanks. And I'll just say thanks for also bringing up the issue of farm to table, because I think that's something that we could work on in our district and think creatively about how our food systems are sustainable as well. So absolutely. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So I just wanted to add, thank you for thinking about it in a forward-thinking way and doing things like the boilers right now and those smaller projects. So we are well on our way. We really appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that I hope some of the kids that worked, the students that worked so hard on this last year, are watching right now and seeing what happened and the excitement that's happening. So shout out to them. Shout out to Anne Matson and her team that worked so hard on this last year. So great work, you guys. And thanks to you for getting this going. And thanks again, Paul, for carrying the ball forward for all of us in the district.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you so much, Paul. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy for this. It's something I'm proud of. Superintendent, did you have anything you wanted to add to this conversation?
Only that I just love the fact that this was a student initiative, and that those kids, I mean, how empowering for those students to get this done. It's so very meaningful, I think. I just think it's great.
I personally enjoyed working with them so much, and I love that we did this. I'm proud of the work of all of us. So thank you. All right, moving on to the discussion for our agenda. First item, sorry, I keep losing you. The first item on our discussion agenda is the 2020-21 calendar. It says on the agenda that we have Tiffany Hall and Moselle Orton here to discuss that, but I think I'll let you introduce that, Superintendent, if that's okay.
Well, and I'll go ahead and discuss it too, and then if we need some extra help, we can get it.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'd start out by saying I just, my apologies to everybody on the board for my learning curve. I think it made some things kind of clunky at the start, and I'll take ownership of any kind of confusion or discomfort around the calendar proposal. So sorry about that. So on the first thing, that you had a couple of documents. You had the 180-day proposal attached to the agenda, as well as it was called the balanced grading periods, but we'll show that to you in just a second and kind of go through that in detail. On the 180-day document, though, kind of the key pieces was that we moved the start date to September 9th, and when we did that, we took away 9 school days. And then on October 6th, the Utah State Board of Education approved a waiver for 6 days. And so that left us with 3 days that we needed to account for. And it kind of alludes to those, and we'll show it on the calendar as well. But so the proposals for adding 3 days of 4 hours of asynchronous or independent learning for students on September 25th, November 25th, and March 5th. And I think Tiffany's going to share the calendar that will show this in a graphic format. You're muted, Tiffany, but you're still muted. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this shows a graphic representation of what this means, and I think, yeah, right there, this maybe doesn't quite. Well, yeah, that shows the whole thing. So what you're looking at there is, this shows all the details. So it's got the grading periods, which are noted by the asterisk. So you see the first one on October 9th. That would be the midterm of first quarter, and then you would see the end of term noted by EOT, and I'm looking for that right now. By the exclamation point. So it's actually right next to it on November 9th. That would be the end of the first quarter. And then what the decision days in red, what those indicate those are the days that we want to make a call for the learning mode that we would be in for the next period. And so the point of that is if we're shifting to hybrid or we're shifting to all back in person, we gave it 2 weeks of lag time, because this again is going to be one more thing that families are going to have to deal with. There'll be some things to figure out, work schedules and things of that nature. So we wanted to allow a little time for that. So you see that the first decision day is on the 28th of September, and the end of the grading period would be the 9th. And so the 12th of October would be the first opportunity for using a different learning approach. Then you see a part that says survey open and survey closed. So when we originally sent out our registrations, we asked folks if they would prefer to be online or at school, and it ended up to be kind of a false choice. And so we would have to come back and survey again to determine how many people, if we go back on the 12th, even in a hybrid, how many people would want to be in a remote environment so that we can kind of put our details on how we would accommodate that. So that's what the green pieces are: survey open, survey closed. We'll open it for 1 week and gather that information to make a determination. And then you see in yellow the 3 extra digital days. This also shows the balancing of the quarter. So down in the lower right, you see in yellow how the number of days is distributed over the terms. So that, I think, covers those 2 documents that you saw attached. I would also just add that, given our short timeline, I'd request that the proposed calendar could be moved to the action agenda. And if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
I just want to commend you and everyone that worked on this, because I think it represents a lot of thought and a lot of attention to detail. I had a bunch of questions about this going in, and you've answered them all. So I appreciate that we've kind of come to a solution that I think, even if it's not perfect for everyone, it addresses all of the questions that come from the state and all the questions that we have about how, we need to know going into this year all of the sort of decision points. So thank you all.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
I shared these with Melissa before now on I believe it's the 25th of September and the 5th of March were professional development days. Is that not right?
Yes.
And 25th of November was a comp day. Is that not right?
That I'm not sure about. Maybe Tiffany could answer that question. I'm not exactly positive about that.
My question is this: if the teachers now have to prepare lessons on those days, do we have to pay them?
Well, we asked teachers to do that in that 2-week time period before school started to prepare those 3 asynchronous lessons. So we should have that material ready to go on those days.
But still, do we have to pay them? Because they were originally professional development and comp day, and they were not planning on teaching those days.
Well, I would think that if they've made the lessons during this first few weeks that they've been on contract, then in that sense, yes, we paid them to make those lessons, right?
No, we haven't paid them if they have professional development and a comp day. I think the union, I don't know whether the union is going to say anything or not. I know we have to get this all approved through the teachers, this particular proposed calendar, but I'm just wondering if we're going to have to pay them, if they're going to say, hey, look, if you're going to make us prepare lessons on those 3 days, and we want to be paid. And I think President Ford indicated that's $1.5 million. So I think we ought to be very sure.
Michael,
Yes.
I'm sitting here with the union representatives right now, and they're 2 thumbs up on the plan that we presented. They're good with it.
Have they presented it to their teachers?
Their teachers all know. Yeah.
Okie doke. That's my question.
Thank you.
Sorry, with the screen being shared, I can't see everybody. So if you've got your hand raised, and go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So we have the decision days. We have the survey to close, open and close, and then we have the decision days, which is I really am looking forward to hearing from our parents about what they're interested in. But I'm wondering how we are weighing those surveys along with our data, our scientific data. Can you give us any feedback about that?
Well,
So a particular scientific, we've already talked about the scientific data that we're using.
The survey data would only be to tell us that if we did make a decision, it's about a week later, if we did make a decision, when we make that decision on the 28th, if we were to go back in hybrid, would you come back in hybrid, or would you go remote? So that's what those are about. But that survey data doesn't affect the decision. It just tells us what people are going to opt for, so we know how to react to that.
Christy, go ahead.
Thanks so much for the screen share, Tiffany. That was really appreciated. I think all of us know that have either been a parent or served on the calendar committee, how difficult it is to put a calendar together, for the school year, let alone 3 years at one time, and there's always, the ups and downs of it. I do think that it's one of the most important shared governance committees that we have. And as you said, Superintendent, there was a little bit of a misstep there, that the direction from the board was that the calendar committee needed to be convened. I think that, the options that you've put out there might not be ideal, with them being professional development days, and then they become asynchronous days, for our students. And, and that the calendar committee could very easily have come up with the same recommendation to the board. I think that it's important as a board that, we do take seriously, and I know you do too, the importance behind, those committees and the stakeholder input that comes onto those calendars. So I think that, obviously the most important thing that we've been asked about is what is the calendar, and, that we need to get that out for parents, so that they can plan and they can see. And so I appreciate that we have something as comprehensive as we do, and that we know that we might need to be flexible in the spring, as you've already pointed out, and as Catherine, pointed out with the survey part of it, knowing that if we do go into the hybrid in the spring, that there would probably be some issues that we would have around, especially, is it a March date? I think it's one of our March dates. Is that right?
It's March 5th.
March 5th, right. So just so that we know that that could be a possibility. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in to say, I appreciate the work that went behind it, and hopefully that as we go forward, that we continue to honor, those board committees that we have and the direction that the board gives to you as our superintendent. So thank you.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I just want to, reiterate what Christy's saying about the calendar committee, because we've been saying this for a long time. And I really appreciate her recircling back to that and saying it, because, I know that we've been talking about how important this is, and that it was not clear at all who was on the calendar committee for the last 3 years, or for establishing this for the last 3 years, that we weren't sure about the parents and even the district people. That was not clearly established, and it was really not established in any way. So I really appreciate her circling back to that and talking about how important it is for us to have that as a transparent process, because that really wasn't. And we talked about that at length when we had to go back to the calendar and establish fall break. So I think it's really important that we have that as a really transparent process. And I really appreciate her talking about that again. So thank you.
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody involved, and thank you for the comments from the board. And I just had a quick, maybe addition to the calendar just based on parent feedback I've gotten. They're wondering if we could add our board meeting dates to the calendar. I think with everything going on this year, one of my friends who I worked with was just like, gosh, it's really hard to look at all these different documents that the district has. But they're paying attention to things a lot more acutely right now with everything going on with the pandemic. And I just wanted to advocate for request and just wondering why not necessarily why they're not on there, but if they could be added, more or less.
I think that's good feedback. I saw board members nodding. If you're in support of that, let's go ahead and give that direction. to add those to the calendar. Thank you. And thank you all for this conversation. I am open to if other board members have something they'd like to say or add. I would just echo what's been said here. Hasn't been a smooth process. Like I find myself saying often, I think we stumble, but I think we're stumbling forward, and that's what we want. That's how we learn, and that's how we improve. And I think the important thing is that we do have a calendar to post so that people can make their plans around it. And I know a lot of work has gone into this, and I appreciate that as well. So that's my 2 cents. I would take a motion to move this to action.
Go ahead, Nate.
Certainly. Thank you, Board Member Hanson. I would like to present a motion that we approve the calendar as presented to us tonight with the addition of our already scheduled out Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meetings.
Let's move it to action first, and then let's take action on it. Then let's take action on it immediately so we can move through this quickly. So the first motion, Nate, is just to move it to action.
Correct.
Move it to action. I move it. I will move that I'll make the motion that we move this to action.
And second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's go ahead. Any discussion? Let's just vote on that.
Poe, yes.
Mike Demelka, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hanson, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, let's go ahead if you're all in agreement and take action on it now. So the proposal is, go ahead, Nate. Go ahead and make a motion.
Sure. And thank you for the correction there, Board Member Kennedy. I'd like to present the motion that we approve the calendar as presented with the addition of already scheduled out Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meetings.
I will second.
Any discussion to that? Let's go ahead and, oh, go ahead.
I would add, I mean, this is minutia, and I'm sure you'll figure this out on your own, but just to make sure that we note that they're subject to change, because of course we change them from time to time as a board. So to maybe note that, check the website for the most, or have a link, to the place where the meetings are on their own so that there's no confusion. But yeah, other than
right.
that.
Just to clarify, you're talking specifically about the board meetings. Yes. Which do occasionally from time to time change, so double check those. But the calendar itself, as far as the student calendar, will not change without first the board taking action on it.
Correct.
So what's posted will be accurate for students. And I think that's good feedback, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Let's go ahead and vote on this motion.
Michelle, yes.
Mike Demelka, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hanson, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
All right, thank you. Now that can be posted on our website as the official calendar. So thank you for that. Moving back to our discussion agenda, the second item up for discussion is the virtual school. Superintendent, I'll turn that to you to open this discussion.
Okay, so just as first part, when we were having this discussion early on and just concerned about what we were going to do for our students that needed to be online all the time, we did request a number from the state for a school. Now that has to be, of course, approved by the board. A new school does, but you saw the application, which was attached to the agenda, and that request was just for a number. So I'm going to let Tiffany kind of talk about the rest of the nature of that, the virtual school.
Okay, well, thank you. And I might be as surprised as everybody else that we're here in this conversation. No, I mean, not about that that the superintendent asked me to do it, but about, the virtual school piece of this. I do think that there was some confusion about the application. I will also say that the first time, for instance, that I saw this form in real life was this morning when I opened it off the agenda. So I just wanted to give you some context about how this happened. In July, we had a lot of conversations about what models we were going to need to meet student needs and how we were going to respond to students who at that point we didn't know we were opening in remote, but how are we going to respond to students in hybrid that wanted to stay remote, or when we came back that wanted to, or what would all of those things look like? And so we were talking about how to track classes and how to put them in PowerSchool, and what would that look like if we were assigning a grade to them or assigning a teacher, and all of these different things. And we were just running things around, and somebody said, well, if we had a number, we could account for all of those things. And I'll level with you, at that point, I thought, well, last year I went to accounting and I asked Carrie Smith to give me a different number for world languages because I had dual language immersion money and world language money in the same account. And they were two different programs and I couldn't track them. So he split those out and gave me two different numbers, and that made my life a lot easier. So he said yes. And so, in that process, apparently we inadvertently created a school. At this time, we are running classes online. We have those options. They're currently running inside of the school, so a student at East or West or anywhere could simply take a period out of their day. Right now we're doing it through Seats, which is the state program. We have Canyon's virtual program that we have students enrolled in, and then we have Utah Students Connect, which is a consortium that we belong to. And so we have all of these options for students to do online or virtual teacher-led NCAA-approved courses, not in their school day. And we can continue to do it that way in perpetuity. There's nothing that says we would have to break them out. We can figure out how to do all of the pieces around that. And so we could keep this number in case we ever needed it sometime in the future. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a lucky number and we'd want to keep it. Maybe it's not a lucky number and we would not want to keep it. We could close it and then do this process again at such time it was decided that this was something we wanted to move forward with. That's kind of where we are with virtual school.
So I guess we may need it, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the point where we are right now. Is we may need it, we may not need it, and this is also an item I guess I would ask that we could move to action item, but it would be that we would be able to use this number if needed, and we'll have to determine that as we move forward through the calendar and what happens in terms of return to school.
Thank you, Superintendent, and Ms. Hall. I appreciate your information on that. I'm sure that there are questions. I know I have questions. It sounds like there's value in having this, and that we can use this to our advantage through the pandemic, but also post-pandemic. Is that how you would assess that as well?
I would. I think this could possibly be part of the takeaways, the upside from this whole thing. I mean, at some point, being able to offer students a wider variety of ways to work their way through the educational system, I think that could be advantageous.
So a student could be enrolled in their comprehensive high school and this virtual school at the same time, and not without affecting enrollment or their funding or their numbers. I mean, could you explain that to me a little bit?
Do you want to talk about that, Dr. Hall? I see you leaning.
Sure. Well, that's an excellent question. And really, I mean, anytime you take a student out of a period, then the school loses a piece of the WPU. Right now, we're losing that to Seats every time we enroll a student into that. And if we roll a student into Canyon's virtual, a piece of that WPU follows that. The amount is about, for Seats, $700 per period. Were we to be able to pull that into our district, we first would not have to do it at $700 because we would not have, I don't know what they use it for, but we would keep that money in our own district rather than sending it to one of the virtual programs. So that is one of the things about bringing in Utah Students Connect and running that, a little bit more internally or as part of this consortium. The portion of the WPU that if we continue as a consortium as we are now, the portion that the WPU that the consortium takes is less. So, we're on the same model, possibly a little bit more efficient or effective. I don't know if that's the right word. Were we to run it as a virtual school and pull that completely into our district and say, we are going to run this with our students and our teachers only, and make that something that a student could have 8 days or 8 periods. Right now a student could have 4 periods of virtual and 4 periods at East, and it kind of works out in the wash. But if a student wanted to take all of their periods virtual, they could do that. We would like at that point, I would think, to be able to control that. If we had students that were 100% virtual, we would like them to be Salt Lake City School District students, and that we would keep that WPU. But again, these are all preliminary discussions, and that's as far as we've gotten with them. If you ask me a deeper question about that, I don't have an answer.
Yeah, there's one more part of that too, is that if we do this, we'll do a very good job at it, and the potential of having other students from outside our district in our virtual school could potentially be a source of funding coming into the district.
Sam, go ahead.
I think this is exciting, and I'm really excited about the possibilities for how this could help after the pandemic in terms of making credit recovery a more meaningful educational experience. And like the superintendent said, this could be another area in which we're a leader in the state. And I know we'll have more discussions about this as those post-pandemic opportunities present themselves. But I think we should go ahead and act on this tonight, because this is really in alignment with the plan that we talked about over the last few weeks in terms of having an online option if and when we do go to the hybrid model based on changing circumstances with the pandemic. So I would hope, I don't want to cut anyone off, but I'm going to go ahead and motion that we send this to action, and of course we can have further discussion on action. But I do think we need to take action on this tonight, and I would love to be a part of the discussions about how this can help post-pandemic, but maybe those should be scheduled for a future meeting. So I'll go ahead and move that we send this to the action agenda.
Second.
And okay, any discussion to that? All right, I'm sensitive to the fact that not every board member's had an opportunity to have a discussion about this yet, but we do have a motion and a second on the table. So if there's, go ahead, Christy. You speak to the motion.
Yes, so I can't support moving it to action tonight. I think that this is very preliminary. I appreciate, first off, I just want to thank Dr. Hall for a great report. But I do think that, this is a creation of a school. It has a number, so it has been created. We've already had an announcement from Superintendent Madden that there's been a principal that's been assigned to it. And, so administrative position was created. And the Board of Education is the only one who can create or establish a school. And so I haven't heard from Alan, we haven't had any budget recommendations. I don't know, what's tied to this, or, what it looks like. A consortium for me is so important. It is, because we've talked about this for a number of years. Catherine and Melissa and I were all part of that when the law was changed, and it is $700, as you stated, Dr. Hall, that a portion of that WPU follows that child. And so having that in-house is so important. I completely agree with that. And to a certain extent, we've had some type of a consortium that was established, a number of years ago through a previous administrator down at Innovations. So for me, I think it's premature. I'm hearing from Dr. Hall that it's not immediate. Even if we got more information, that we could even put it on our agenda in our next 2 weeks, so that we could get some budget information from Alan. We could see the scope of it. The board could also approve administrative position and, look at that piece of it. So for me, I feel like it's premature, so I won't be able to support moving it to action.
Okay, so the motion is to move this to action. Let's go ahead and take a motion on whether we move this. Well, the creation, I want to be clear what we're moving to action, Sam. We're moving the virtual school.
Yes.
Creation of a virtual school.
I'll restate my motion. So I'm moving that we send to action the question of approving the new school application attached to our agenda under the second discussion item, the Salt Lake virtual school, grades 7 through 12, opening on September 8th, 2020.
Okay. So the motion is that we move that to action. We've got a second. Christy's spoken to that motion. I am not prepared to take action that specific tonight either. I think we need a little more information. But so that's my speaking to the motion. But let's go ahead and move it, decide on whether we want to move it to action.
Michelle Tuitapo, no.
Mark Demelka, no.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, no.
Christy Sweat, no.
Okay. So we aren't moving that to action. I would like to say that I am really happy to continue this conversation and be moving farther down this road. I think we need to be prepared to do this, but I want to make sure we have the budget discussion, we have the employee discussion, and know exactly, the board needs a report on exactly what's happening with this before we move ahead with creation, is my 2 cents. Any other comments from board members? Sam, then Christy.
So to be clear, we will be sending money away. I mean, I just want us to think for a second about what this means. We're sending money away from the district in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a huge reshuffling of resources, and basically throwing a wrench in the plan that we all approved. I mean, 6 of us approved it. So that we can, I of course want to have a larger discussion about this, whether it's me or whoever takes my place. And I don't think we should rush into the idea that we're going to make online education our hallmark as a district. But I don't see that as being what we're doing here. I see this as being a part of the plan that we approved. So I'm a little confused about what we would, in the name, I mean, I totally agree that we should talk about what this means in the long term. But the idea that we're sending money away from the district.
So maybe that's
mind-boggling
something we can talk about, right? I mean, really and Tiffany and Larry, I would love your feedback on this, right? I'm not trying to throw, personally, I don't want to make this more difficult, but I also feel like it's important as we as a board are creating a new school that we know exactly what those parameters are. We don't have very much information about how that will work.
We did discuss that there would be an online option. Now,
right.
I will admit I didn't know that meant creating a new school number and registering it with the state board. I'm guessing some of us on the board that have served longer might have known that. But to me, this is kind of a technical issue where it just doesn't make sense to me that we are going to stand in the way of getting this incredibly important part of our services this year moving. Of course, we're going to have, of course, we'll have discussions about what this looks like going forward. But this seems like an unhealthy obsession with discussing things ad infinitum. I mean,
well, we haven't. To be fair, we haven't discussed this very much,
Okay.
Sam. And I don't want to. Like I'm saying that I don't want to slow things down without purpose, but I do think we do need to have some good questions answered about this. And I don't want to monopolize time. So I saw other hands. Did I? Go ahead, Christy.
So I appreciate your concern, Sam. I do. I think that, we don't want to stand in the way of progress, but I think that we need to take seriously as board members, and make sure that, we were caught in this a number of years ago when we created innovations, and the board didn't know that it was being created. And so it's a similar situation again, where let's just take the 2 weeks is all we're asking. And kids have already signed up, for online, correct, Dr. Hall? And, so it's not that we're sending money away. I think that, that we already have a consortium that we're a part of. So for me, this is about establishing a new school. And let's just make sure we're transparent, that the board is involved in the discussion, that we understand the budget priority, or the budget parameters around establishing this new school, and also a new administrative position, which is, a big deal. And so for me, I appreciate your concern. I don't feel like we're throwing a wrench. I just want us to take a couple of weeks. Please gather some information for us, provide it, to the board, so that we can, in a transparent way, say, yes, we want to make this go forward, because I did not think that our discussion was about creating a new school. This has taken me by surprise.
Well, and I totally understand why you wouldn't want to end up in that. And I'm not, I'm sorry if I got a little.
No, I didn't take offense.
I could totally understand why you wouldn't want to end up in that situation. I wasn't on the board, but I'm aware of what happened with innovations. And so maybe there's a way that we can clarify that this is something that we're motioning on just for the year, just so we can get it off the ground. And then maybe there's a way to make a motion that says, the board, again, I won't be around, but the board will absolutely revisit this at the beginning, in the summer after this coming school year. I'm just very wary of, sorry, go ahead, Superintendent.
Oh, I only wanted to clarify one thing is we don't need this for September 8th. We're ready to go, and we're going to start in a remote environment. And so the soonest we could possibly need something like this would be October 12th. So I just want to make sure maybe that wasn't clear in what we said before. So, some feedback, going back and providing more information, that's okay. I feel like that's okay.
Could we ask Alan to speak to the possible financial consequences of not taking action on it tonight? Because that's really the main thing I'm concerned about. I'm a little concerned about getting in the way of.
Hey, we've already voted on this, Sam. Let's move on.
Just 1 second, you guys. I know that Catherine's had her hand up for a while, so I don't know if you could see that.
So yeah, sometimes it's hard to see. What we haven't moved this to action, but we are still discussing. And so I will give the floor to Catherine for her comments.
Well, I just wanted to say that, that I was willing to do this. And one of my concerns was having our employees are going to be really busy for the next 2 weeks, getting school off the ground, retasking and spending a lot of time working on this and getting a big presentation ready for us. If they feel like they can do it for us in the next 2 weeks, that's great. I am thinking that the information that we received already, and that doing this for a year was a good. I was happy with the information we received. I think it's a good plan. I think it's a logical plan. I think we had an employee that was working for us that could do this in a logical way, and would be a good fit for this job. I was pleased with that. So I was happy with the plan. But if they think they can put together something in the next 2 weeks, and that's what I'd like to ask. I mean, Alan, Tiffany, the people that need to put together the plan, do you think you can put together something for us without, giving yourself too many late nights in the next couple of weeks? That's my big question. I know you have a lot on your plate already. So that was what my concern was. Do you feel like you have time to do another presentation on something like this?
I think maybe we need more time because actually it is a lot, and you're right. I mean, we're right here at the cusp of starting. We may have to, there's work that we don't even know that we're going to have over the next couple of weeks when we get going. So I think I would rather see it pushed further back. I'm okay if we don't even opt for which agenda we put it on now, and we can revisit it in a month or a month and a half. I don't think we're not going to need it before. It's going to take a little while. This is a big undertaking, and I appreciate that, but I don't think we can do it in that time frame.
So I wonder if there's an in-between place, if we could give a tentative approval then. Is there some way that we could make sort of a middle ground where we think that that would be okay with Christy and okay with Sam, where we could find a place where we think this is a good idea. We feel like we're going to go forward with it. We do think that Christy has some good points about how the board needs to make sure that we feel comfortable with schools. I think Sam has some good points about how we want to make sure that people feel like we're moving ahead, that this is a good thing. Is there a way that we could say that we feel like this is a good plan, that we feel like we're going forward with this, but we'd like to give our employees enough time to prepare reports, but we feel like we're on a good path? Is there a way we could do that as a board and go forward in that direction?
So I'm not sure what that motion would look like, but I'm happy to support a middle ground kind of conversation that says, well, this is someplace we may need to head, and we're working toward it. But we have.
I move that we.
I've got a couple hands too, Catherine. Just so you know.
All right. Then
Christy.
I'll wait.
I was just going to make a suggestion, just in the interest of time and the conversation, that while we may not necessarily make a decision at the next board meeting, I think it'd be really good for us as a board, either between now and then or on the 15th, to give very specific instruction to the superintendent and to the cabinet about what exactly our questions are relative to budget, relative to timeline and process. That way we can have a better understanding about how we move forward so that we can meet that October timeframe. That would just be my suggestion for tonight.
I'm just going to echo that's what I was going to say with Nate, is that we don't need to take a motion. We can give direction, which I think, would be a formal direction, to gather, as both you and Catherine and Sam, all of us have said. We just need some more information, and then we can, take formal action on it.
So I'm comfortable giving that direction. Is the board as a whole comfortable in giving that formal direction to move forward with this virtual school for formal approval at a future meeting, with questions being answered, including from Alan, budgetary questions? Okay, so superintendent, what you have is formal direction from the board to proceed on the path you're on, with an opportunity for the board to vote to approve this pending those questions being answered, including budget questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's a great solution. Thank you, everyone, for the conversation. Does everybody who wants to speak to this had a chance to speak to the discussion? Okay, then I'll just say thank you to everyone for participating in it. Not an easy discussion, but well done, everyone. Thank you. Moving on to the third item on our discussion agenda, it's the permanent access easement. The superintendent, I'll let you address this.
I think, Alan, you were going to address that one.
Yes, I'll address this one. So Salt Lake City is requesting that we grant them an easement for a parcel of land that's on the parking strip at Dilworth Elementary. There currently is an existing bus stop there. They would like this easement to expand and improve that easement. In the agreement, if they ever stopped using that area for a bus stop, the easement would end, and we would take and it just basically, yeah, the easement would then be over. Again, there currently is a bus stop there, and they're just asking for additional easement area to improve that bus stop.
Thank you, Alan. And just to be clear, would you recommend then granting this permanent access easement?
Yes, I would recommend that the board grant this permanent easement.
Okay. Do I have any discussion to this discussion item? Nate?
I'm just wondering if business administrator Kearsley could speak to, the process that the city's gone through relative to the Planning and Zoning Commission with this.
I don't know what they've done with the Planning and Zoning Commission since there already is a bus stop there. Possibly there was nothing needed. I don't know if Christina has any insight on that as well.
Sorry, it's Christina. So no, there wouldn't have been any additional zoning requirements. Initially, the city wanted to just have a permanent easement and pay us $700 for the land, but we went back to them and asked that it not be permanent in perpetuity and only be as long as it was required for the bus stop. And part of the easement is, as Business Administrator Kearsley said, for them just to continue the maintenance and upkeep of the bus stop. And it just allows them to not have to ask for our permission whenever they do any upgrades to the bus stop. So, but no additional zoning is required.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Any other discussion? I would take a motion to move this to action.
President Ford, I'd like to move that we move the permanent easement to the action agenda.
Second.
Did somebody say second?
I thought I heard Catherine say second. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So let's go ahead and vote.
Michelle Tuichpo, yes.
Yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hanson, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, move to action. Now let's take action on the only remaining item on our action agenda.
President Ford, I'd like to make a motion that we approve and grant the permanent easement to Salt Lake City Corporation.
I will second.
Moved by Nate, seconded by Catherine. Any discussion at this point? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
Michelle Tuichpo, yes.
Mike Malker, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hanson, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
All right, so moved. That's approved 7-0. That concludes our discussion agenda and our action agenda. And I will move to the board member report section of our agenda and begin with Michelle Tuichpo. If you've got something you would like to add as a board member report, go ahead.
Nothing really to add. SEC meetings haven't started up yet, so.
Thank you. Mike?
I won't make you mad tonight, nothing.
Catherine?
So a brief a meeting was held at West, and I realized that we need to forward that to Michelle, and I apologize that we didn't do that, Michelle. That's probably on me. I apologize for that. So I'll make sure you get the one. It was held out of regular order on days, so I'll make sure you get the next one. And I just want to thank the people serving on the West SEC for doing so diligently and regularly. And besides that, everything's going well. So thank you so much for all the people on our SECs that are serving and working so hard and doing great things in our committees.
Thanks, Catherine. Nate, do you have an update?
I do, and thank you for the opportunity. I really more or less have a very brief update on the RFP search process for a vendor that will ultimately be working with us to hire a 2-year contracted superintendent. Would like to thank the evaluation committee of Tyler Barnes and board members Kennedy and Sweat for their participation and help with this as well. I'm happy to announce that we are on track. As all of you know, we had a RFP process that was published to BidSync in late July, and it did close. The RFP closed on BidSync on August 20th. I can announce that we had 7 vendors respond. I can't say who they are per procurement laws. And we're in the process right now of evaluating those proposals, board members Kennedy, Sweat, and myself, with tentative dates to interview of the evaluation committee, the vendors that meet the muster, so to speak, also with a tentative approval with this board on the 15th, pending that there's no unidentified circumstances that would prevent us from doing that.
Thanks for that update, and thank you to the RFP committee members for going through that process. I know it's a lot of work. Sam?
I don't have a report. Thanks.
All right. Christy?
I'm just going to echo something that Catherine said. You know, our SCCs in my precinct have just been on the ball with changing some of their trust land plans and, you know, relooking at how to use their money. So that's been really great. Roberto, if one of the things that I was thinking about with that high school committee is also to make sure that we include not only parents, but our special ed parents. You know, if we will make sure that there's an invitation that goes out to them. And then I would just like the policy committee to look at our policy that specific about instructional hours, because right now our policy reads 1,000 hours. And it also says that in the written agreement. So either we need to suspend, you know, part of that policy. Maybe Christina will be able to help the policy committee, you know, look at how to do that. But I think that where it's written in our policy, it's also in the written agreement where we only have 900. You know, I think that, you know, we just need to put that caveat in there in some way just so that we can be in alignment with our policy. That's it. Thanks.
Policy committee members, are you willing to look at that? I-5? Yes. Okay, thank you. I would like to ask board members Kennedy and Sweat and potentially Hanson to give us a quick update on the delegate assembly with USBA. Somebody want to take the lead on that?
First.
Catherine, you're our representative. Thank you, Catherine.
So we did meet for extensively on last weekend or the weekend before on Friday night and Saturday morning, and we came up with a lot of initiatives for JLC, and we are pursuing some good joint decisions for all of our school districts and working together on some things. They did decide something that Christy and I both voted against, which is to support the
Change to the earmark.
Yes, to change
the constitutional, the
constitutional thing. And so I think Christy and I both do not support that, and Sam as the backup also doesn't. So that's something that we as a board should discuss at a different meeting, and how we want to handle that as a part of our board. What do we want to do? Since I think that at least the 3 of us do not believe that that's the best way to proceed. To support changing the constitutional earmark and supporting that. So we need to just discuss that as a board and decide where we stand in terms of how we're going to act in terms of the JLC and what we want to do in terms of board. What do you think? Christy, do you want to add on to that at all?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. So I think that Catherine and I felt very confident from previous conversations that our board had about the constitutional amendment, that we weren't in agreement, during the legislative session, that we didn't feel like it was something that, Salt Lake District could support. I think that, as Catherine said, it makes it a little hard sometimes when, the JLC as USBA comes out, that we try and support their initiatives. So it might just come down to, as a citizen versus a school board member, that's how you speak to it. But I think that it was a very emotional, well, maybe not emotional, but very passionate discussion that we had. I think the one thing that Catherine and I definitely agreed on was that the JLC is there to make recommendations to the board of directors, which Catherine and I sit on, and the board of directors then takes those recommendations and passes them to the delegate assembly. But the delegate assembly's responsibility is then to look at those recommendations and then vote on them as the priorities for the year. And I don't think any of us should ever be shamed, which I felt like Catherine and I got a little shamed, and to a certain extent about the constitutional amendment. But that's the time to do it, is to debate and to talk about, if we're not in agreement with something. And so I was glad that we had the opportunity to say that, that day, that we value being a part of the JLC, but we also value that it is those delegates, not the JLC and not the board of directors, that decides on the priorities. And it really was a close vote. It wasn't something that was a slam dunk. It was 2 votes or 3 votes, right, Catherine?
Yeah, it was, because they need to pass with at least 2/3. And also the other thing is that there was some amount of, well, we made this commitment to the legislature, and there was some amount of pulling people through with that. And I felt like that was not the way that we should be making the decision. We needed to decide whether it was right for us to change the legislative earmark, and whether we felt like it would continue on in the best interest of the school children of Utah. And we really feel like it isn't a good idea to change the constitutional earmark, and that we're not sure that the legislators that are making the commitment right now will remain and always, and that the legislators that replace them will have the same ideology. So it's hard for us to decide to change the amendment that we have that guarantees that monies will go to Utah school children, and change that for perpetuity, and make that shift and as support that as school board members, and do that. And we feel really strongly that that's not something we should do right now. So I think we may need to talk about that as a board, and to look at that very carefully, and then talk about that to our constituents really carefully about how we think we should vote. And so we need to really spread that word, and we need to educate people and educate all the teachers and things like that. And we will have a lot of information from USBA about all the things that we've decided on, and many of the things are the same. Many of the things that we go forward are very similar. And there is some stuff about COVID that's helpful, that we can pass out. We'll pass out information. We have fall meetings. I think you all probably received a flyer about the fall meetings, and they'll be virtual. So there's some choices about what you can attend. Did you all get the flyer this last week? Should have gotten the flyer in the mail. Okay, good. And so attend those meetings, and you'll get the information about the JLC agenda and the Joint Legislative Council agenda. And then we can talk as a board sometime about how we feel and what we are going to go forward as, in terms of how we feel about the constitutional amendment.
Thank you, all 3 of you, for participating in that, and especially to Catherine for being our representative on the USBA Board of Directors, and to Christy for her national representation. I know it's a lot of work. I've been there, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. This is something that we've prioritized as a board to discuss, not a legislative conversation. And just as a reminder, we do have that legislative conversation this week. So make sure you're participating in that. And we're, anyway, thank you for all of that. And thank you all for your participation in the meeting. Before we close the open meeting, I would entertain a motion to to go into a closed executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation and character and competence of individuals. Is anybody willing to make that?
I'm willing to make that motion, President Ford. I'd like to make the motion that we go into closed executive session to discuss pending litigation and character and competence of individuals.
I would second that.
Any discussion to that? All right, let's go ahead and vote.
Michelle Tuichpo, yes.
Mike Namalka, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion is approved. We will convene that meeting at the conclusion of this one. And so with that, I will say thank you to everyone who's joined us for this meeting and appreciate the work we've accomplished. Goodbye and thank you.
How do I do that logistically? Is it the prior link?
Stay.
We just stay on this link.
Stay on here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.